I thought that when the court delivered its verdict, everything would finally end, but justice is never as silent as we imagine. The sound of the gavel that day still echoes in my mind, dry, sharp, and final, as if sealing the door on an entire lifetime. 2 weeks later, I sat in my lawyer's office, the light reflecting off a cold, white sheet of paper in front of me. The day I signed the new will removing my son's name forever, my hand did not tremble, only my heart felt heavy, as though I had just buried a part of myself. With each stroke of ink sinking into the page, I felt the line between justice and loss blur a little more, because sometimes, to preserve what is right, we must sacrifice what is sacred. I didn't know then whether this was the beginning of victory or a final farewell. Before we continue this story, please like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share your thoughts in the comments below. What do you think? Does justice truly bring peace, or does it only leave behind a silence we can't quite name? My son left me behind in a foreign country, no money, no passport, no hope. He wanted me gone for good, so he could claim the house I built with my own hands. But when he finally walked through that front door again, I was already waiting. "Oh, you're home," I said, smiling. "I've got a surprise for you." That surprise destroyed his entire world. Before we go on, don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell me in the comments, what time is it where you are right now? The airport was loud, with movement wheels rolling across polished floors, boarding calls echoing in 2 languages, the hum of departures filling the air like static. I remember the chill of the air conditioning cutting through the heat outside, the metallic tang of recycled air. Amid that constant motion, I stood still, unseen. In that moment, I realized something painful. Even a forgotten suitcase in this terminal would get more attention than a father abandoned by his own son. Ryan and Chloe sat close together on the seats by gate 17, their heads almost touching, whispering urgently until they noticed me approaching. The way they jerked apart was so sharp, it looked choreographed, like guilt made visible. "Everything okay?" I asked, settling beside them. Neither looked up. That morning had felt wrong from the start, their silence too thick, their politeness too practiced. The light from Ryan's phone glowed cold on his face, turning his expression hollow, distant. Chloe's fingers gripped the edge of her boarding pass until the paper bent and creased. They spoke in fragments, glances, and uneasy smiles that didn't reach their eyes. Something had shifted between us, something I couldn't yet name. We still had an hour and a half before our flight to Seattle. The week in Puerto Vallarta had been good, or so I thought. Beaches, family dinners, laughter that had started to sound real again after my wife passed. I believed we were rebuilding something. But this morning, the air between us carried a tension that felt almost physical, like walking into a room moments after someone slammed the door. 20 minutes later, Ryan stood up suddenly. "Dad, we need some water and snacks for the flight. You know what we like." "All right," I said, "we can all go." "No," he interrupted quickly. "You go ahead." He pressed a $20 bill into my palm. His hand was cold, cold like metal. "I need to make a quick work call. Chloe has to use the restroom." I looked at them both. Chloe's eyes stayed glued to her phone. His voice was calm, but too calm, too measured. The space between us stretched wide, larger than the ocean we'd flown over to get here. "Okay," I said quietly. "I'll be right back." I walked toward the shop across from the currency exchange. I picked each item: carefully imported water for Ryan, trail mix with dried cranberries for Chloe, a protein bar for myself. It was such a small, ordinary act, but part of me clung to it, the habit of being useful, being a father, even when the cracks were already there. I didn't know those 12 minutes would change everything. The checkout line was slow. A family ahead of me argued over candy bars while their toddlers screamed. I remember looking at the clock, 12 minutes, maybe 14. Then I hurried back, plastic bag in hand. When I reached gate 17, my heart stopped. The seats were empty, not just empty, cleared. No bags, no coats, no trace. The new passengers in those seats scrolled through their phones, oblivious. I stood there frozen, the fluorescent light above flickering faintly on the metal armrests. The world around me blurred, the boarding calls, the laughter, the rolling luggage, all muffled under the roar of my own pulse. I dropped the plastic bag. The bottles clattered, the sound too loud, too real. My hands shook as I tore open my backpack. Shirt still there, toiletry pouch still there. But the side pocket, the one where I always kept my passport, empty. Front pocket, no wallet, no phone. Every zipper I opened was a blade across my chest. I turned the bag upside down. Nothing, only silence and disbelief. The smell of plastic and sweat filled my lungs. My fingers trembled so violently I could hardly close the zipper again. I ran to the counter, breathless. The young airline attendant looked up, startled. "The couple that was sitting here, the man and woman at seats 14 and 15, did you see where they went?" She typed something, her eyes scanning the screen. "The Hales," she said softly. "They boarded an earlier flight to Denver, a standby upgrade. Departed 20 minutes ago." "Denver?" My voice cracked. "We were going to Seattle. That's my son." She looked up again, sympathy flickering across her face. "I'm sorry, sir. Their boarding passes show Denver." The floor seemed to tilt beneath me. Denver, not Seattle, not home. "They didn't leave a message?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Her expression softened. "No, sir." I sat down in the empty chair, the same chair Ryan had occupied half an hour earlier. I pulled the $20 bill from my pocket. It was crisp, uncreased, the only thing left in my possession. He'd handed me $20 and taken everything else. 3 bottles of water, trail mix, a protein bar, $12 spent on care, $8 left for survival. I went to the security desk, still dazed. The officer behind the counter had tired eyes, the kind of eyes that had seen every kind of human mistake. "My son took my passport," I said. The words sounded absurd even as I spoke them aloud. "My phone, my wallet, he left me here." She blinked, professional but kind. "Do you have any form of identification, sir?" "Nothing," I said quietly. "Just this." I held up the small plastic bag, 3 bottles of water glinting under the light. She filled out a form, asking questions I barely processed. Name, address, flight number. Then she gave me a printed report and a gentle instruction: contact the U.S. consulate downtown. Her voice was careful, almost rehearsed empathy shaped by routine. I walked out of the office with the papers in my hand. They felt weightless, meaningless, like receipts for a life I no longer owned. The terminal stretched endlessly ahead, shops glowing, people laughing, families boarding. Every one of them belonged somewhere. And then there was me, a man reflected in the glass wall beside Gate 17, with an empty backpack and $8 to his name. Behind that reflection, planes lifted into the blue, each one carrying a story of reunion, of love, of return. One of them carried my son. I stood there long after it vanished, my own reflection staring back like a ghost of a man who used to believe in family. Around me, the airport's noise faded until all I could hear was silence and a single, unanswerable question that would haunt me for months to come. Why? I drew a breath, then another. The airport air tasted of metal and too many strangers, dry, recycled, faintly sour with sweat. The dizziness receded like fog lifting off a field, and in its place came a cold, precise alertness. Asterisk, asterisk. Stuck, asterisk, asterisk. The word ticked in my head like a second hand. I looked at my hands, still steady, even as my heart lurched. In that instant I understood something I hadn't felt in years. The part of me that had chaired crisis meetings and signed 7-figure contracts hadn't died in retirement. He'd only been sleeping. Asterisk, asterisk. Identification first. Money second. Home third. Asterisk, asterisk. A checklist assembled itself the way it used to before board meetings, each item snapping into place with the relief of a plan. The information desk sent me to the U.S. consulate. The sliding doors sighed open, and a wave of heat hit my face. Exhaust, sea salt, ripe fruit. Outside, the city roared. Tourists bargained for silver. Vendors called out prices from pushcarts stacked with mangoes and limes. Buses coughed black breath and lurched away. People streamed toward cabs and hotels and tour vans, each of them with a destination, a waiting bed, a next hour. I stepped into that current like a ghost with an American passport and no proof of it, drifting through a tropical city that wasn't yet mine to leave. It took me **20*** minutes on foot. I counted intersections to keep my mind from unraveling. At the corner by a pharmacy, a child laughed so hard she hiccuped. At the next, a dog slept under the shade of a newsstand, unbothered by the world's hurry. I kept moving, one foot, then the other. The consular office was small and mercifully cool, a box of order set down in the city's bright chaos. The air smelled faintly of toner and chilled carpet. An American flag hung quiet behind the counter, all red, white, and blue, a fixed point that steadied me more than I expected. The framed portrait of the president watched over a waiting room furnished in beige and patience. Keyboards clicked. A laser printer whispered. For the first time since the gate went empty, I felt the edge of safety. A woman at the reception desk looked up as I approached. "Tell me what happened, Mr. Hale," she said. "Start from the beginning." She wore a name badge. **Laura Whitman, ***. I sat and told her. The trip, the airport, the vacant seats that seemed to glow with absence. I said the sentence I'd never imagined would pass my lips. My son left me at the airport. He took my passport, my phone, my wallet, everything. My voice didn't break, but the words were rough, as if they'd scraped their way out. Laura listened with her head slightly tilted, pen hovering and then moving again, pausing at times as if to let the weight of a detail settle. "Your son has done this before?" she asked gently. "He's been living in my house," I said. "Rent-free, 2 years. I think he wants to keep it." Saying it aloud pressed something sharp against my ribs. Ryan's name stayed behind my teeth like a splinter. Chloe's too. Something shifted in Laura's face, not unprofessional but human. The practiced distance ached back a fraction of an inch, and understanding stepped through. She set the pen down. "We can issue an emergency passport," she said, fingers already moving fast over the keyboard, the screen lighting her glasses into 2 small squares. "Minimum of 3 business days. We'll need a police report and a payment of $135**. I emptied my pockets onto her desk. The sound was small but brutal in the quiet room, coins clicking, paper rasping. "I have $8, I said. "Mexican coins, a breakfast receipt from 3 days ago, and this." I laid the $20 bill down last. It looked too clean, too bright, a museum piece of my last certainty. Laura excused herself. The door whispered shut behind her, and the room settled into its soft chorus of keys and printers. I looked at the flag on the wall. Its colors felt deeper here, like a reminder and a promise. There is still a country to return to, if you can get back to its door. She returned about 10 minutes later with papers and miraculously news. "We can defer the passport fee until you're home," she said. "There's an emergency assistance fund for immediate needs. You'll pay it back later." She slid the forms toward me, careful, deliberate, as if she were putting a fractured thing within my reach. "You don't know me," I said. "I've done this for **28*** years," she answered. "I can tell who will and who won't." She met my eyes. "You're not broken, Mr. Hale." The corner of her mouth lifted, not a smile exactly, something steadier. "You're angry. Angry people find their way home." Something uncoiled in my chest, not comfort, exactly, but purpose. I gripped the edge of the desk and felt the strength return to my hands. Not the strength to forgive, not yet, the strength to act. I signed where she pointed, block letters, deliberate strokes. The printer warmed and spat out confirmations. Staples clicked, like little hammers driving down a structure that would hold. At least for now. Laura gave instructions, names, addresses. "Police report," she said. "Keep every document, photograph anything you can. Come back here with the report number." I gathered the papers as if they were oxygen. When I stood, the room felt different, less like a refuge and more like a launch pad. Outside, The heat wrapped me again, but it no longer pressed me flat. The city sounded the same, horns, vendors, gulls, but that noise now threaded into a path I could follow. Identification first, money second, home third. The order rang true. I stepped into the light, not as the father who had been abandoned, but as the man who would not stay lost. I would find a way back. And my son, Ryan would see that I had. Outside the consulate, I sat on a green-painted iron bench, the paint flaking to reveal rust underneath. The Mexico sun pressed down as if it meant to melt the street itself. Papers trembled in my hand with each hot gust, salt air braided with exhaust. Across the road, a vendor rang a tiny bell to sell bottled water. A thought struck hard and simple. A few hours ago I'd been an American with a house, a wallet, a name. Now, I was only ink on a form. A woman approached Marisol Vega, the information desk attendant from the airport. I recognized her steady eyes before I remembered her name. "Do you have family you can call, friends?" she asked, voice soft but sure. "My son is my family," I said. "I have neighbors, but no way to reach them." She nodded slowly, as if agreeing with a truth that had taken her years to learn. "Sometimes the people closest to us are the farthest away," she said. "My father, similar story, different details, same betrayal." "What happened to him?" "He survived," she said, looking past me to the heat-shimmering avenue. "Built something new. You will too." Her old Honda hummed with a steady rattle as she drove. The radio murmured a melancholy Spanish ballad. Neon signs slid by in a blur of color and salt-heavy air. We passed a strip of beach where umbrellas leaned like tired soldiers, then turned into a quieter street lined with palms. A small inn hid behind their shadows, its wooden sign Posada del Sol flickering amber. $15 a night, Marisol said. Modest, but decent. Inside, the fan turned in slow, faithful circles. The lobby smelled of laundry soap and sea. When I tried to press $2 into her hand for gas, she shook her head. "My father was left behind once," she said. "Some betrayals cut deeper than others. Keep it." The dormitory held 6 bunks and the breath of the ocean. I took the bottom bed in the corner. 2 German backpackers spoke to each other in quick, bell-like syllables. A construction worker from Guadalajara peeled a mango with a dull knife and offered me a slice. We shared bread, cheese, fruit, strangers performing a small ceremony of kindness I had not found in my own family. That night the girl let me borrow her phone. I dialed my home number. The international ringtone stretched thin across an ocean, each chime a tug on a fraying rope. No answer. An hour later I tried again. Still nothing. The silence said more than any voicemail could. Day 2. I walked to the downtown police station, counting blocks to keep my thoughts from splintering. The building buzzed under greenish fluorescent light. A ceiling fan beat the air with the pace of an exhausted metronome. An officer with a thick mustache took my statement through a translator. "Stolen passport," I said. "Stolen phone, stolen wallet. By my son." At that, his eyebrows rose only for a heartbeat, then dropped as his fingers resumed their slow typing, as if he'd learned that parents and children betray each other often enough to make it ordinary. "Do you believe this was planned?" the translator asked, eyes on the form. "Tickets to Denver instead of Seattle. The timing. The standby upgrade?" "Yes," I said. "Planned." He printed the report, stamped it, and handed it to me with an apologetic look that said what his English could not. This paper might be the truth, but it would not change my day. That night, the dorm fan clicked steadily overhead while memory unspooled. I saw Ryan in my kitchen a month ago, attentive, helpful, arriving more often than usual. "Let's update your medical directives, Dad, just in case." The document on his laptop, the electronic signature pad. My name scrawled in trusting strokes, no printed copy, no questions. The realization doused me like cold water. It wasn't a medical directive. I sat up so sharply that the German backpacker across from me startled. What had I signed? Power of attorney? A deed? The possibilities circled like vultures, each darker than the last. Day 3. I walked Puerto Vallarta not as a tourist but as someone scouting terrain. Sunlight flashed off shop windows. Beneath my feet the city's rhythm aligned with the old cadence of negotiations and risk. The executive in me, quiet too long, clicked back into place. What does Ryan want? The house. What does he think? I'm trapped here. What's his timeline? At least a week before he expects me home. My advantage? Surprise. At noon I returned to the consulate. Laura Whitman handed me the emergency passport, thin, temporary, but official, and an envelope from the emergency fund. $600, she said. Pay it back when you can. I felt the unfamiliar weight of cash, the way hope has a heft when you can finally hold it. I found an internet cafe, $1 for 30 minutes, and bought a ticket. Seattle, direct, $420, departing the next morning. Ryan had mentioned meetings in Denver. 2 days, maybe 3. That meant I could beat him home by at least 3 days. Back at the hostel, I became myself again. Pen, paper, plan, change the locks, find whatever I signed. Call an attorney. Make Ryan explain himself face to face. Not revenge, justice. There is a difference. The German girl looked up from her travel journal. Are you okay? She asked. I stared at the ceiling for a moment, then nodded. Maybe for the first time in a long while, I said. She tilted her head. Maybe he doesn't want to know, she added, meaning Ryan not answering my calls. That's what I'm counting on, I said, and surprised myself with a small, quiet smile. He thought I was stranded here. He was wrong. The next morning, I boarded a flight to Seattle. Economy class. My seat wedged between a young mother cradling her sleeping infant and a teenage boy lost behind his headphones. The emergency passport rested in the chest pocket of my shirt, the remaining $165 hidden in my sock. As the plane rolled down the runway, the engines vibrated like restrained thunder. Through the small oval window, Puerto Vallarta began to shrink, the coastline curling like a memory, the hotel roofs gleaming in the early light, the airport where everything had changed reduced to a tiny silver grid. Sunlight caught the plane's wings, turning them white-hot, blinding. I watched that shimmer fade as we climbed. Somewhere below, the man I used to be, the trusting father, the man who believed love was enough to hold a family together, stayed buried in the dust of that country. I didn't look back, not once. My thoughts were already far ahead, over the mountains, over the border, standing at my front door in Seattle, the image of me waiting there, still as stone, when Ryan walked in and realized his father was home. The seatbelt sign blinked off. The flight attendants moved through the aisles, metal carts rattling rhythmically over the grooves in the floor. That sound became a clock ticking toward confrontation. The air smelled of instant coffee and warm plastic. The baby beside me stirred, whimpered, then fell quiet again. When the attendant leaned toward me and smiled, asking, "Water, coffee, or soda?" I said, "Water, the free one." She handed me a tiny plastic cup. I held it carefully with both hands, not because it might spill, but because it represented everything I had left: restraint, precision, and the will to make each small choice count. 3 hours and 40 minutes to Seattle. I planned each minute in my mind like a chess match. Ryan didn't know I was coming. He thought I was trapped in Mexico, out of the picture, out of reach. That ignorance was my greatest weapon. I pictured his face when he opened the door, the shock, the disbelief, the scramble to recover his composure. I had even rehearsed my own expression: calm, silent, unreadable. I didn't need to yell. Silence would say more. Through the window, the sky turned from turquoise to slate. Clouds gathered, thick and gray, as if the weather itself braced for what awaited below. When the pilot's voice came over the intercom announcing our descent, my pulse steadied, not raced. The tires struck the runway with a sharp metallic shriek, and the plane shuddered. Seattle unfolded beneath a curtain of mist, a skyline of glass towers and evergreen hills, all washed in rain. The familiar smell of damp asphalt and jet fuel seeped into the cabin. The mother beside me sighed in relief. The teenager yawned, already reconnecting to his world through music and signal. But for me, this wasn't homecoming. It was entry. Out there, Beyond those gray runways waited the house my son had stolen, the life he thought he'd buried. Seattle looked the same, the green hills, the dripping streetlights, the gray horizon, but everything in me had changed. The wheels slowed, the engines roared backward, then quieted. When the cabin lights blinked back on, passengers began unbuckling, reaching for their bags, smiling at the relief of arrival. I didn't move. Not yet. I let them go first. All those people returning to their ordinary homes, their unbroken lives. Then I stood, gripping my small carry-on with one hand and the emergency passport with the other, the fragile proof that I still existed. Outside that gate, Seattle waited, familiar, rain-soaked, indifferent. But this time, I wasn't the man who'd left. I was the man coming back to reclaim what was stolen. And for Ryan Hale, the storm was just beginning. Dawn cut a gold stripe across the east kitchen window, laying it over the scarred wood of the table like a campaign ribbon. Steam rose from a chipped mug of instant coffee, thin, bitter, sufficient. Beside it lay a creased note page, blue ink slashes through last night's tasks. Attorney, police report, locksmith, each circled twice, like rings on a target. I touched every line with a fingertip and read them under my breath the way a man repeats a vow. I'd spent the previous evening on David Coleman's loaner laptop, sifting downtown listings for real estate litigators with a record of winning title fights. One name kept surfacing in the published opinions and courthouse chatter, Grace Lynn. At 8 o'clock sharp, I dialed her office. "Earliest consult is next week," the receptionist started. "My son took my house," I said, voice low. "I have the paperwork. I need help today." The line drew a breath. "Please hold." Half a minute later, a different voice, precise, composed. "This is Grace Lynn. Tell me what happened." I gave her the distilled version. Mexico, the airport, the empty seats, the manila folder on my desk. She asked 3 questions, clean as scalpels. "Was the deed notarized?" "Yes." "Is that your signature?" "Yes." "Did you know what you were signing?" "No." 11 o'clock, she said. "Bring the deed, any ID you have, bank statements, photos, and a written statement from your neighbor." I prepared for that meeting like I used to prepare board decks. I assembled the file, the deed of gift, my emergency passport, account summaries, photographs of what was missing, David's signed statement about seeing Ryan loading boxes, everything in chronological order inside a brown binder. I dressed to standard press shirt, slacks, jacket. Appearance is an argument. People weigh credibility by what they see first. Her office was on the 20th floor with a view that bit off a corner of the Sound. The elevator opened to the smell of carpet and toner. Books lined 2 walls, titles glinting like blades. Grace was smaller than I expected, early 50s, movements exact, voice tuned to the key of authority, hair dark with a thread of gray, drawn back with care. She pointed to the client's chair, soft, scuffed leather that had learned the shape of other people's crises. I set the deed on the glass desktop. The word deed reflected upside down, like a wrong spell. She slipped on readers and read without a pause. Her face didn't move. Her pen did fast, stitching notes into a legal pad. After 5 minutes she looked up. "This is facially valid," she said. "Proper form, proper notary, standard language. Your signature looks genuine. Yes?" "Yes." "Then, as of the date on this instrument, your son holds title to your home." The sentence fell with the weight of a roof. A beat. Then, the hinge. "However, if we prove misrepresentation, if you were deceived about the nature of the document, we can ask the court to void it for fraud." She rotated her monitor toward me, magnified the text, and pointed. "Walk me through the signing." "Exactly what did Ryan tell you?" "He said it was an update to my medical directive. Power of attorney if I lost capacity. I'm 63, it sounded responsible." He scrolled fast. The text was small. He called it boilerplate. I trusted him. I never received a signed copy. Her pen underlined as I spoke. Small print, fast scroll, no copy provided, medical framing, each underline a drumbeat. That's our angle, she said. Concealment of material nature, control of presentation, no post-signature delivery. She scanned the notary block. This was done carefully, deliberately. We'll need the notary's account. Her typing quickened. This will cost money: filing fees, investigative work, possibly an expert. I sold a company 3 years ago, I said. I have resources. This is worth every dollar. She named numbers like coordinates on a map. Retainer today, 5,000. If this goes to full litigation depositions, experts, trial add 20 to 40,000, perhaps more if the other side fights hard. I'll write the check. Chances? If fraud is established, 60-40 in your favor, she said. The Mexico abandonment will help contextually, but fraud is a high bar. I'm not leaving the house, I said. I didn't think you would, she answered. I've cleared my calendar accordingly. East Precinct in the afternoon. Fluorescent light painted fatigue onto the young officer's face. Linoleum scuffed to a dull shine. Metal chairs. I filed a formal complaint. Theft at the Mexican airport: passport, phone, wallet, and theft from my home. Clock, silver, watch, camera. The suspect is your son? She asked, fingers moving deliberately over the keyboard. Yes, and he lives with you. In my house, I said. The house he's trying to steal. She glanced up. Civil issue on the title, sir. We can log the stolen items. The property dispute belongs in court. The theft occurred at an international airport, I said evenly. The watch and camera have serial numbers. That's criminal. Her typing sped. She asked for numbers. I had them pulled from old insurance schedules. When she asked the value of the silver, I gave a conservative estimate. 3,500. 90 minutes later, she slid a case number across to me and said someone would follow up, with the tone of someone who hoped I wouldn't hold my breath. Back at Grace's, the machine of law hummed. She drafted while I watched. Keystrokes, print, signatures, packets collated and clipped with the finality of a gavel. Motion to void deed: fraud, undue influence. Request for expedited hearing, due to habitability dispute. The process server will deliver these to Ryan, she said, tapping the stack. He'll know you're home, and that you're fighting. Good, I said. I want him to know. The locksmith arrived at 5. Company van, metal toolbox, a middle-aged technician with steady hands and the air of a man who has seen too many late-night lockouts. He didn't offer a name. I didn't ask for one. He held up a ring of new cylinders that chimed like small bells. These are solid, he said, pick resistant. We'll do the front, back, and garage entry. Upgrade the whole line, I said. Cold screws clinked into a tray. Old brass fell away, exposing dark wood beneath. The new deadbolts seated with a final thunk that sounded like a door learning its true language again. The old keys won't throw these, he said at the front door. If someone's got copies, that problem just died. I understand. He handed me 3 sets of keys. 340. I paid without blinking. Some purchases you feel as investment, not expense. After he left, I walked the perimeter room by room, testing every lock twice. Smooth turn, clean slide, perfect engagement. I pocketed 1 set, hid another in a new place, left the third on my desk. Then I moved furniture by inches, the sofa 6 inches closer to the wall, the dining chairs angled a few degrees off. Small changes, invisible to most eyes, but to an intruder who'd memorized the lay of my rooms, they would read as a new claim, mine. Night drifted down over Capitol Hill like a thin scrim of fog. I stood at the front window. Behind me, new locks lay quiet as animals asleep in their right den. Across the street, a neighbor's porch light blinked routine Morse from the civilian world. My legal filings were in, my police report, logged, my house, my fortress, my battlefield. The new phone sat face down on the coffee table, silent as a cocked pistol. Ryan didn't have this number. He still pictured me stranded in Mexico, helpless, abandoned, wrong. I checked the margin of my list and wrote the time, 6:47 p.m. In Denver it would be 8:47. If he were me, he'd be finishing dinner in a hotel and sketching his next move. The uncertainty bothered me less than it should. Position matters more than prediction. I had repositioned. In the kitchen, the refrigerator light revealed shelves like blank pages and a bottle of expired milk. Logistics weak note for tomorrow. Tonight, instant coffee and a slab of freezer bread would do. I carried another mug to the window and watched the empty street. No headlights yet. I took a slow sip. The bitterness rang clear and useful on my tongue. "Come ahead," I said to the glass, to the quiet, to the shape of what was coming. "Your turn, son." I waited. 2 days passed, not as waiting but as warm-up. I arranged the living room like a command post. Files squared on the coffee table. Phone aligned parallel to a pen. New keys bright in my palm. The recorder app blinked ready. I walked the perimeter windows latched. Deadbolts seated. Sightlines noted the way a field officer checks earthworks before first light. Late on the second afternoon, a car door thudded outside, the sound deep and familiar enough to sting. I moved to the front window and lifted the curtain an inch. A silver Honda slid into my drive and stilled like a creature returning to a den it assumes is still its own. Ryan Hale stood beside it, staring at my house as if the paint might speak. Even from behind glass I caught the flicker cross his face, confidence curdling into doubt. Chloe stepped from the passenger side, eyes already scouting the porch in lockset. Her lips moved close to his ear. I couldn't hear the words. I didn't need to. I counted to 5. No doorbell. No knock. Instead, metal against metal. Once. Again. A third try. Harder. Teeth of an old key worrying a new cylinder. A hissed curse. Through the door I heard Chloe's voice, thin and sharp. "Is it jammed?" "It's," he began. "It's changed," I murmured to the quiet house. "Like everything else." Footsteps circled the siding. The back door tried and failed, then the garage entry. Each attempt ended in that small, clean silence a good lock makes when it refuses. My old phone, somewhere inert in a drawer, gave one gaunt ring and died. The new phone lit in my hand. Unknown number. I let it ring 3 times, on purpose. Each chime a reminder that we were playing by my clock now. I answered. "Arthur." "Dad? Is that you?" "It is. Where are you?" "We've been trying to reach you, I'm home, Ryan, inside. Your keys don't work anymore." Silence so pure I could hear his heartbeat if I wanted it. Then, a strained exhale. When did you? "Come to the door," I said. "We need to talk." I opened the door just wide enough to stand in the frame, half in shadow, half in the gray of Seattle air. I did not step back. I did not say, "Come in." The smell of wet pavement and gas drifted between us. Ryan stood on the top step, travel creased, stubble rough on a set jaw, the fatigue of 2 days of driving piled under his eyes. Chloe hovered behind him, arms folded, gaze mapping my porch the way a surveyor measures a lot. "Thank God you're safe," Ryan said, trying on a son's concern. "We were worried sick. What happened at the airport?" "We looked everywhere." I raised a hand. "Stop. I know exactly what happened. You sent me for water. You and Chloe boarded an earlier flight to Denver. You took my passport, my phone, my wallet, every means I had to move or call. You left me in Mexico with $20 and 3 bottles of water." His mouth opened and closed once. No words. I angled my body just enough for them to see the coffee table by the door, where documents lay squared and waiting. I picked the top one up and held it so the porch light caught the red court stamp. "A motion to void deed for fraud," I said. Color bled from Ryan's face. Chloe's fingers tightened around his arm. "The document you had me sign, the one you called a medical directive, was a deed," I said. "A transfer of my house to you. Paper theft before the airport theft." "We need an attorney," Chloe said, voice like chipped ice. Ryan rallied, heat snapping back into his tone. "That deed is valid. My lawyer reviewed it. Your signature was properly notarized. This house is mine. You're the trespasser." He lifted his phone. "I'm calling the police." "Do," I said. "Seattle East Precinct has my report. Case number 774,821. Theft at the Puerto Vallarta Airport. Items stolen from this home before that collector's clock, vintage camera, silver service, a watch with recorded serials. Our neighbor, David Coleman, saw you loading boxes. They have your name, your description, your flight information. Call and see what happens." His thumb hovered, then stalled. Something in his eyes recognized, for the first time, that the board had shifted. I raised my own phone. The screen reflected the three of us, a tiny red dot pulsing in the corner. "This conversation is being recorded," I said evenly. "Washington requires two-party consent. Consider yourself notified. Every word from here is evidence." His phone lowered an inch. Chloe tugged at his sleeve and whispered with urgency. He kept his gaze on me. "This isn't over," Ryan said. "No," I said. "It isn't. It just isn't going how you planned." They backed off the porch, steps hollow against the wood. The car doors shut with soft, defeated clicks. Headlights dragged a pallid wash across my siding, across my face, and then slid away down the street. I closed the door. The new deadbolt seated with a crisp, satisfied tack, a small sound that weighed more than a gunshot. I leaned against the wood and let air move in and out of my chest until the adrenaline settled into something usable. Round one to me. Through the front window I watched their taillights fade. My hands were steady. My heart was loud. I made a circuit of the house habit, now touching every latch and lock, palms reading the perimeter like Braille. All secure. In the kitchen I filled a glass and stood at the sink. The house grew quiet in a way I had almost forgotten, a quiet that belonged to me. The phone vibrated. A text from David. "Saw them come and go. You okay?" I typed back. "Okay, thank you." He did not pry. I did not explain. Back in the living room I gathered the papers into their binder, motion to void, police report, bank advisories, locksmith invoice, evidence for resistance, evidence for war. The phone rang again. "Grace Lynn's office," I answered, expecting questions about the porch exchange. Instead, I got the dry, efficient cadence of her paralegal. "Mr. Hale, opposing counsel has filed. Ryan Hale is represented by Richard Blake, who specializes in property disputes. He's submitted a counterclaim affirming the deed's validity and a motion for immediate possession pending judgment." I sat down, the binder heavy in my lap. "Immediate possession?" Yes, sir. They're arguing hardship hotel expenses, lack of access to the property they claim to own. Miss Lynn is drafting our opposition now." I looked at the window. Rain had begun, a fine veil draped over the neighborhood roofs. Somewhere out there, my son was cataloging his next move. Somewhere in here, the first real battle lines had sorted themselves. "All right," I said. "If they want to fight, we fight to the end." I set the binder in the center of the coffee table, exactly where he had once left a manila folder that tried to erase me. I clicked the recorder off. Outside, Seattle breathed its slow, wet breath. Inside, the house held steady around me. No one was leaving me anywhere ever again. 3 days after the porch standoff, I sat in Grace Lynn's conference room. The printer in the corner breathed out warm paper, and the air smelled of toner and coffee. Binder clips bit the edges of a dossier thick as a paving stone. Grace tapped the cover with one neat fingernail, an even metronome, the heartbeat of the hearing to come. "Richard Blake filed for an emergency possession hearing," she said, sliding the stack toward me. I read the caption, then the bolded line that might have cracked a window if words had weight. "You are unlawfully possessing your son's property." I gave a small, tired smile. There are ironies so clean they could cut glass. "He isn't disputing facts," Grace went on. "He's changing fields, off the tarmac in Mexico, off the theft, off the ethics. He wants one question only. Is the paper valid? If we let him keep it there, your outrage is worthless. So we move the field back. We anchor it with proof from the signing itself," she said. "We need 3 things. First, sworn testimony from the notary. Second, evidence you were never provided a signed copy. Third, any text or email where Ryan framed the document as a medical directive. Land those 3 and our misrepresentation argument grows teeth." She poured more coffee, offered the mug. I shook my head. She continued. Blake's brief paints Ryan as a wronged homeowner in a hotel hardship, irreparable harm, paper title. It's tidy. Judges sometimes grant temporary possession pending trial when the deed looks clean. I turned the pages. Each line cinched a slow cord around the throat. Homelessness, dwindling funds, rightful access, all deployed to push me out of my own front door. We'll oppose immediately, Grace said, and we'll get you sworn up for the timeline. A week after the confrontation, the pressure ratcheted. Grace called with worse news. Ryan had filed for immediate possession. The argument was theater hotel receipts as props, a sweet key for a halo. Still, theater can sway a room. That night, David Coleman caught me at the fence, voice low. I don't believe it, Arthur, but people are talking online. I don't keep accounts. He held up his phone. Chloe's post was curated pain, a photo of stacked suitcases in a lobby, a cropped bill, text trembling just enough. My father-in-law gave us his home, then changed his mind and locked us out. We're effectively homeless while he squats on our lawful property. Families shouldn't do this to family. Hearts and crying faces traveled in a vertical river beneath it. A few old acquaintances had tagged my name with cautious questions. I handed the phone back. Outside court, moral stickers sometimes decide the spirit of a crowd before a judge speaks. I asked David if I should respond. Talk to your lawyer, he said. Anything you say out there walks straight into evidence. So I kept my silence while their lie made noise. Sometimes silence has more weight than argument. The people who matter will wait for the truth. 2 weeks in, Grace scheduled a financial sit-down. She spread cost estimates like a campaign map, columns for filings, discovery, experts, hearing days. The total at the bottom felt hot to the touch. Initial retainer, $5,000, she said. We've already burned through $3,500 in supplemental filings and investigation. Full discovery and trial? Realistically, $40,000 to $60,000, maybe more if Blake drags his feet. She met my eyes. I need you to understand the commitment. This is mortgage money, retirement money. Ryan is betting you'll settle rather than spend. I'd run numbers the night before. The sale of my company left me with enough runway, but watching the gauge drop hurts differently than calculating it. If I settle, I said, I pay him to return what he stole. It depends what you offer, she said carefully. But a settlement rewards the conduct that brought us here, and they can smell that. They'll ask for terms that insult gravity. I met later with my financial advisor, the woman who has stewarded my retirement for 8 years. She modeled scenarios in calm tones. 50,000 over 6 months is sustainable. 80,000 over a year is damaging but survivable. Then the question that mattered. You can win and still lose. Win the house, lose your ease for the rest of your life. The issue isn't can you win, it's what do you want to spend to do it. I didn't answer in the moment. Alone that night, I did. Yes, it's worth it. 2 weeks after that, Richard Blake called with his first olive branch, the bark still on it. Mr. Hale, I'm reaching out to see if we can resolve this without prolonged litigation. My client is willing to let you rent the property at a reasonable rate until you secure alternate housing. Rent my own home? I asked, drawing out the last 2 words. A half-beat of silence. He softened his register. I'm proposing a middle ground. There isn't middle ground between title and theft, I said. We'll see you in court. After I hung up, I retooled the guest room into a war room. I strung a red thread from the date of the deed signature to the day I was abandoned in Mexico. I pinned hotel receipts, screenshots of Chloe's post, photos of the empty spaces on my shelves, the locksmith invoice, the police report. Each pin a barb, each thread a line of fire. The wall turned into a map of an operation. I kept a daily log, too, every call, every filing, every cost. I am a man who once signed payroll for hundreds. Still, my hand hesitated when I added the newest outlay. I gave myself 5 full minutes to feel the fear, to stare at the old callus in my palm where work used to bite. Then I folded the fear like a pocket knife and put it back where it belongs. On a gray afternoon, surrounded by motions from Ryan, bank statements showing retainers bleeding down, cost projections from Grace, and Chloe's curated misery, doubt crept in. Wouldn't it be simpler to buy peace? I let the thought sit, unchallenged, for exactly 5 minutes. Then I remembered the gate at the airport, the 3 empty seats, the hollow backpack, the $20 bill, and the calculation in my son's eyes. Doubt hardened back into purpose. I looked up at the wall. Every arrow pointed at the same dot, the day a judge would listen. I capped my pen, wrote one last line across the whiteboard. No bargaining with thieves, and killed the light. Tomorrow we continue. 4 days after hiring Samantha Lee, I met her in a narrow downtown cafe that smelled of rain, espresso, and floor polish. Outside, February drizzle stippled the window. Inside, the grinder coughed like a clock counting down. Samantha arrived on the dot, no jewelry, hair pinned back, canvas tote in one hand, tablet and a bristling manila folder in the other. She ordered a black coffee, no sugar. Then she sat, leveled her gaze on me, and skipped the pleasantries. "Your son is drowning," she said, "not flailing, sinking." She turned the tablet, and the screen bled red. Columns, rows, overdue flags, 6 credit cards, $47,000 in revolving debt. 3 accounts already in collections, a 4th marching toward a lawsuit. "He's been dodging calls for months," she added. Tapping a cell shaded the color of a wound. Minimums missed, penalty APRs, then balance transfers at predatory rates. "He isn't spending anymore, he's burning." She swiped. The numbers gave way to curated gloss. Chloe on a rented deck with a sunset behind her, a stemmed glass tilting for the camera. Another post-brunch plates with gold cutlery. Another designer shopping bags on a hotel duvet. "Work hard, play harder," the caption beamed. Samantha didn't editorialize. She didn't need to. The ledger beneath the images had done all the talking, each photo a fresh layer of interest. 6 months ago, Samantha said, returning to the spreadsheet. 1 creditor filed. Right after that, the card activity goes quiet, no more meals out, no flights, just transfers and cash advances between accounts. That's the moment he started looking for a long-term solution. "Permanent theft," I translated. "Desperation," she replied, not flinching. "Not because the house is a luxury. Because it's the only asset within reach. People at the bottom of a well will climb anything that looks like a ladder." My hands lay flat on the table. Something in my chest shifted. No pity, not exactly. Just the cold clarity of a price someone else had decided I should pay. "Now the paper trail," Samantha said. She drew the folder toward us and fanned out printouts. 3 emails, all in February. Identical subject lines, different days. Requesting property valuation. She tapped the address line on each. My street, my number. I read them twice. Ryan had provided square footage, bedroom counts, notes about the deck I'd rebuilt with my own hands. Light-filled, mature garden. Desirable Capitol Hill block. A routine market analysis to any stranger. To me, it felt like someone quietly measuring my pulse to see what my heart would fetch by the pound. Responses came back fast, Samantha said. 830, 865, 840, average, 845. She paused. He built a comp table, efficient, professional, accurate too. The truth of that hurt worse than the numbers. And this part, she cautioned, is legally gray. She slid over a second set of pages, logs printed in sober monospace type. Brokered data from a consumer data aggregator. Purchasable, but admissibility can be challenged. Still, ethically, well. She angled the tablet again. On screen, a list of search queries marched under a Seattle IP address in January and February. How to convince a parent to transfer property without paying tax. Gift deed versus quitclaim deed, Washington. Can a property transfer be reversed after signing? What happens if someone abandons an elderly person overseas? Each line was a step in a lab-built betrayal. Research, prototype, execution. "Richard Blake will fight the source," Samantha said. "Chain of custody, privacy, standing. He'll hammer it. But the content, I said, voice low, is a confession without a microphone. She nodded once. It shows intent, which matters. She flipped to the final page and rotated the tablet so I had to look. An email header, a date, subject line, liability if an elderly person is abandoned abroad, sent February 18th. I stared at the numbers. That was the day I booked Mexico. Samantha let the silence stand, then drew a small circle on her legal pad. The vacation timing wasn't luck, she said. He needed you off the board long enough to switch the locks, move in, and argue peaceable possession if challenged. If you'd stayed away one more week, he might have changed the cylinders and filed a narrative of status quo. Your early return is the single best decision you made. And he planned to finish the job, I said. Lock change, move in, then frame me as the intruder. She folded her hands. That's my read. The house wasn't a trophy. It was a tourniquet. I exhaled through my nose. Outside, a bus hissed. Inside, the cafe soundtrack tried for cheerful. I ran a finger along the edge of her printouts. The realtor replies, the valuations, the screenshots of posed cocktails, the data broker log with its tidy lines of search term cruelty. Can we use the searches? I asked. We'll try, she said. Even if the judge excludes them, they guide where we dig. Realtors to subpoena, timestamps to align, emails to chase, devices to image if we get discovery. And we'll get Grace Lynn a witness list, hotel clerks, anyone who saw you left at the gate, David Coleman for the boxes loaded before the trip. Meanwhile, I'll keep tracing the money. She closed the folder and took a careful sip of coffee, gone lukewarm. Arthur, she added, softer now, this isn't a story about greed. Greed preens. This is a story about air. He chose the fastest way to breathe. I looked past her at the rain stippling the glass. He chose to breathe by putting my head under water. Samantha didn't argue. She slid a copy set across the table. I'll send a secure drive to Grace. Expect pushback. But the frame has shifted. We're not debating a gift. We're proving a plan. I gathered the papers. The cup in front of me was cold, but my throat still burned. As we stood, I glanced once more at the tablet, at that final subject line, and its date. It wasn't only my house Ryan tried to take. He'd tried to amputate a part of me and call the stump a gift. 2 days before the preliminary hearing, Grace Lynn turned her conference room into a war room. Fluorescents hummed, paper lay in deliberate strata, binder clips bit the edges like black iron staples. Grace paced the perimeter with a legal pad, tapping the margin each time she spoke, as if nailing planks onto the argument. Motive financial desperation means broker outreach, intent possession, she said. The search history exhibits are razor-sharp but double-edged. We'll include them in the brief and expect Richard Blake to challenge admissibility. Even if excluded, the narrative residue remains. She sorted our evidence in the order a judge would feel it. You'll testify to the signing, Arthur. Exactly what Ryan told you, how the document was presented, that you never received a signed copy. Then we pivot to planning. The agent emails, the valuations, the timing. A mock cross-examination followed. Grace's paralegal took the role of Blake, voice clipped, eyes like cold steel. Mr. Hale, you signed this document, correct? Yes, but... Just yes or no. Grace raised a hand. Answer, then reclaim the lane. Judge Patricia Morrison allows narrative where it clarifies. Use it calmly. We drilled for 2 hours, until my answers lost their defensive burr and settled into clean edges. King County Superior Court, Department 15. Late April light made the oak panels glow the color of tea. Shoes clicked on stone. Someone shuffled a stack of pleadings. A digital recorder popped once and went steady. I took my seat at counsel table beside Grace. Across the aisle sat Ryan, jaw stapled shut, Chloe with arms folded, and Richard Blake, smoothing his tie with courtroom serenity. Grace rose first. Fraud through misrepresentation, Your Honor. Elder exploitation, a criminal abandonment backdrop that informs the civil dispute. She spoke without ornament, placing each exhibit like a weight. Blake stood and answered as if he'd been waiting all his life to deliver this speech. A valid gift, properly executed and notarized. Father regrets his generosity. He now repackages that regret as fraud. The deed is facially sound. The rest is family drama. Judge Morrison's expression did not move. "Mr. Hale, please take the stand." The Bible felt cool and dry in my hands. "I do," I said, and when I let go, my fingers trembled not from fear, but from the load-bearing weight of truth. Grace walked me through the timeline, my relationship with Ryan, the period he and Chloe lived rent-free, the February signing. "What did your son tell you about the document?" she asked. "That it updated my medical directives, standard language for healthcare decisions if I lost capacity," I said. "He said I should sign to keep things current." "Did you read it?" He showed it on his laptop. The print was small. He scrolled quickly. He called it boilerplate. I trusted him. "He's my son." Blake rose for cross. He smiled the way litigators smile before asking a question they think cannot hurt them. "You signed, Mr. Hale?" "Yes." "You ran a company for 3 decades?" "Yes." "You can read legal instruments?" "Yes." "And yet you claim you did not understand what you were signing?" I met his gaze. I understood what I was told I was signing. "There's a language more persuasive than Latin or statute, Mr. Blake. It's called trust." He paused for precisely 2 heartbeats. Grace's pen stopped tapping. Blake changed lanes. "Isn't it true you had a falling out with your son after this trip?" "No," I said. "There was abandonment and theft." "Answer the question as asked," Judge Morrison said evenly. Grace introduced the paper trail. On the screen, 3 identical subject lines bloomed, requesting property valuation, my address. She read the numbers, 830, 865, 840. Then the debt schedules. 6 cards, balances layered like sediment past due. Collections, suit pending. "Relevance?" Blake objected. "My client's finances do not unwind a valid real property transfer." "It goes to intent," Grace said. "This was not a gift. It was a plan born from monetary collapse." Judge Morrison made notes in a tight, slanted hand. "I'm ordering expert review of the execution conditions," she said at last. "Independent notary protocol analysis from both sides. Will reconvene upon receipt. 6 weeks." When we filed out, rain stitched the air into silver threads. I loosened my tie in the parking lot, feeling like a man who'd walked through a blizzard made of sentences and come out upright. David Coleman called as I pulled into my driveway. "How'd it go?" "It's moving," I said. "The judge is taking it seriously." "Serious doesn't mean fast," he said. "No," I agreed, watching water crawl down the windshield. "It doesn't." A voicemail from Grace waited at home. "Call me, there's a development. Not urgent, but interesting." I called back immediately. "Blake just moved for a cognitive evaluation," she said. "He'll argue age-related decline impaired your comprehension." I laughed once dry, hollow. When argument thins, they attack memory. "It's posturing," Grace said, gentler. "We'll handle it." 2 days later, I sat across from Dr. Elaine Porter in a clinic that smelled faintly of alcohol swabs and printer toner. Her voice was steady, professional, impossible to read. "The evaluation is court-ordered at opposing counsel's request," she said. "I'll assess memory, comprehension, decision-making. Results will go to both attorneys and to the court." She read a list of 10 words, metronomed by the tick of a wall clock. Hospital, television, curtains, flowers, envelope, sidewalk, piano, thunder, basket, mirror. I repeated all 10, in order. Her eyebrows lifted almost imperceptibly. "Now tell me about a significant decision in the last 5 years." I laid out the sale of my company. 3 bidders, matrices of price, terms, and impact on my employees. The buyer I chose because outcomes aren't only arithmetic. The September closing. The net proceeds $320,000 after tax. She took notes without editorial. "Detailed memory," she said. "Clear reasoning." 1 week later, Grace called. I heard the smile in her voice before she spoke. "Dr. Porter's report is in. You're fully competent," she said, "and read the spine of it. Intact memory function, age-appropriate cognitive processing, sound decision-making, no evidence of dementia or clinically significant decline, fully capable of understanding legal documents and making informed choices." Blake wanted the court to see a confused old man, she added. "He just lost that chapter." Outside my window, late lights spilled across my desk like a quiet benediction. They could question my signatures, my silence, my patience. They could not take my mind or the memory of exactly how this began. The phone rang just as I was pouring a half cup of instant coffee. Samantha Lee didn't bother with hello, her voice cut through like a turn signal in rush hour traffic. "I found your notary," she said, keys clacking on her end. "Frederick Moore, independent, home office, and he's already talking." A beat, then lower, confidential. "Ryan paid him $300 cash to notarize your signature at a Starbucks." I set the mug down, liquid climbed the rim and bled over in a thin brown lip. A Starbucks. A Starbucks. "Not his office, not your house," Samantha said. "A crowded cafe where contracts get signed in foam instead of in ink." Something in me wanted to flare, but what rose instead was a cold, flat sadness. Even the deception had been done cheaply. 3 days later, Grace Lynn and I met Frederick in his narrow Ballard office, low ceiling, fluorescent flicker, paper stacks like small, nervous cities. He twirled a pen between 2 fingers, avoiding Grace's eyes. A notary stamp lay face down by his elbow, heavy as a confession. "I shouldn't have done it," he said, voice rough. "A professional notary meets in a proper setting, verifies circumstances. But Ryan said his dad was too ill to travel, mobility problems. Asked if I could meet someplace convenient, cash up front. I needed the work." He glanced at me, then away. "When I got there, you looked fine. Walked in without help, ordered a black coffee, 1 packet of sugar, I remember, because you paid with a crisp 10. I started to question the story, but Ryan kept pushing. Said his father had an appointment right after. We're in a hurry. I notarized in minutes. It felt wrong. Grace didn't scold. She pushed her glasses up, measured. "You understand this torpedoes the integrity of the notarization?" Frederick nodded. "I do. And you'll attest under oath that Ryan Hale paid cash and pressured you to perform the notarization in a public cafe, contrary to protocol." A steadying breath. "Yes. I want to set it right." Samantha, perched on the edge of a spare chair, kept her tone clinical. "Walk us through it again. Exact sequence." Frederick swallowed. He handed me the document already prepped. Said, "Just need a quick stamp for Dad. He's not feeling great." I asked for ID. He presented his. "Your son explained you'd forgotten yours at home, but he had a photo of your driver's license on his phone." He talked fast, kept glancing at the door. I should have stopped. I didn't. Grace's pen scratched fast. "No printed copy to you after execution?" "None." He took the paper back immediately. I sat silent. The deed that tried to steal my house had been crowned official over the hiss of an espresso wand and the rattle of ice in plastic cups. A seam popped inside me, not rage, exactly, relief. Because when lies crack, they don't mend, they run. Grace turned her laptop, keys staccato. "Let's formalize." She dictated as she typed, reading each line aloud so Frederick could follow. "I, Frederick Moore, a commissioned notary public in the state of Washington, declare under penalty of perjury that the following is true and correct, that on date, at a Starbucks coffee house located at address, I notarized a signature presented as Arthur Hale's on a deed transferring real property to Ryan Hale. The meeting occurred in a public venue at Ryan Hale's insistence. Payment of $300 was made to me in cash prior to completion. I observed urgency from Ryan Hale, representations that Arthur was too ill to travel, representations inconsistent with Arthur's apparent condition when he arrived and ordered coffee unassisted. No executed copy was provided to me or left with Arthur. I recognize these facts reflect deviations from standard notarial protocol. Frederick's hand shook, but his signature landed clean. The pen's click sounded like a deadbolt thrown from the inside, locking truth in place where it could not be moved. Grace slid the affidavit into a sleeve, eyes satisfied but not smug. This is the piece we needed. From now on, it isn't your word versus his, it's procedure versus malpractice. And on the sidewalk, rain polished the concrete to a mirror. Over a shallow puddle, the sky lay fractured in silver panels. I thought of Ryan's story, its sheen, its rehearsed lines. It had begun to split, first a hairline, then a web. Soon enough, the whole thing would come down. The night was still, the kind of quiet that carries the sound of every drop of rain. The porch light threw a soft amber circle across the wet bricks when a knock came, 3 deliberate raps, spaced like punctuation. I opened the door to find David Coleman standing there, hands buried in his coat pockets, face drawn between discomfort and reluctant duty. "Chloe called me," he said quietly. "She asked me to pass along a message, said you wouldn't answer Ryan's calls anymore." I tilted my head. And she was right. David hesitated, then pulled from his pocket a folded piece of paper. The creases were deep, as if he'd debated delivering it at all. His voice rasped when he spoke. "She said they want to end this in a civilized way. They'll sign a release of claims, return the property, and walk away if you agree to pay $200,000. One payment. No more court, no more noise. It ends tonight." He looked up, sighing. "She said you should consider the legal fees. Said sometimes peace is worth more than victory." I almost smiled, though there was nothing humorous in it. Peace? After they shattered it? The number hung between us, 200,000. It wasn't just a figure. It was an insult wearing diplomacy's mask. A ransom for my own walls, my own memories, my own name. I took the note from him, stared at it under the porch light. The ink bled slightly where the paper had absorbed moisture, like even the rain refused to keep their secret intact. Beyond the door, the silhouette of the house waited, dark and quiet. Through its windows I could almost see the ghosts of old evenings, Ryan as a boy learning how to plane a piece of cedar, his small voice saying, I want to learn how to keep things strong. Dad, Now the same child had put a price on that lesson. "Tell her no," I said, my voice low but steady. "I don't pay ransom for what was never sold." The next morning I sat across from Grace Lynn in her office, pale sunlight glancing off the neat rows of case files. She set her coffee down without looking at me and spoke first. "I assume they've tried to test the waters," she said. 200,000 isn't random, it's strategic, enough to clear their debts, enough to tempt you into surrender. But they know what's coming. The psychological report, the notary's confession, the financial motive, the premeditation, all of it. Chloe is smart enough to know they're losing. That number is their retreat disguised as generosity. I didn't answer at once. Grace leaned forward, eyes sharp, voice calm but edged. "If we win outright, you regain your home without condition. If you settle, you're effectively paying them for stealing it. And once you do, they'll walk away clean." I nodded slowly. "If I accept, I sign another lie, only this time, I'm the one holding the pen." Grace allowed herself the faintest smile. "I knew you'd say that. And that's why I still stand with you. Cases like this aren't just about property, Arthur, they're about who you become when everything else is taken." I rose, buttoned my coat, and reached for the paper David had given me the night before. It was creased, softened by touch. I folded it one last time, then crushed it into a ball and dropped it into the bin beside the doorway. Outside, the Seattle wind swept cold down the marble steps. Across the street, the faint outline of my house glimmered through a veil of rain, a reminder of what still mattered and what couldn't be bought. "No," I whispered to the wind. "No more negotiations." 3 weeks bled into paper and ink. Grace Lynn tuned the filings like a violin, every citation taught, every exhibit numbered, every word sharpened. Richard Blake answered in kind. The war became a siege of motions and affidavits. By then I had sunk $17,000 into the fight retainers, rush fees, service of process, the invisible meter of justice ticking in the background. 4 days before our scheduled hearing, Grace called with a voice that carried stormlight. "Change of plan, Arthur. Judge Morrison has advanced our calendar by 2 days. She's reviewed the record and wants live argument now." "Good or bad?" I asked. "Unknown," Grace said. "But judges don't accelerate cases they plan to brush aside. She's seen something that needs daylight. Be ready. This could end quickly one way or the other." The courtroom ran on ritual and breath. When Judge Morrison entered, we rose, wooden benches creaked, counsel tables snapped to posture, the choreography of law unfolding on cue. She sat. We sat. Time condensed. Grace leaned toward me. "Whatever happens in the next short while will decide everything." I nodded. No reminder necessary. The judge scanned her notes, then lifted her eyes. "I have reviewed the submitted evidence. This hearing addresses the motion to void the gift deed for fraud. Mr. Blake, you may begin." Richard rose, smoothed his tie, and spoke in smooth, unhurried strokes. "Your Honor, the matter is simple. An adult son, Ryan Hale, and his elderly father, Arthur Hale, discussed legitimate estate planning. The father executed a gift deed. The signature is authentic, the notarization facially valid. Months later, after a family dispute, he calls it fraud. Financial hardship does not prove deceit. Prior planning does not prove undue influence. Family conflict does not turn a lawful conveyance into a crime. The deed stands." He sat, a shade too pleased with the geometry of his argument. Grace stood, fingers steady on a thin stack of exhibits. "Facially valid, Your Honor, collapses under facts. The notary Frederick Moore has sworn to procedural violations that gut the acknowledgement. The signing occurred in a Starbucks, not an office. He was paid $300 in cash, well over 10 times the customary fee, after Ryan told him Arthur was too infirm to travel." That was false. Mr. Hale walked in, ordered coffee, and appeared in normal health. And before any signature, Ryan solicited 3 pre-listing valuations on his father's home. She lifted 3 color printouts. Appraisals requested weeks earlier. This was not a gift, it was a plan. Judge Morrison leaned forward. "Mr. Blake, how do you account for a 12-fold notary fee and an off-site notarization in a coffee shop?" Blake rose, voice pitched for reason. "Convenience, Your Honor. My client sought to accommodate his father's mobility limitations." The judge's eyebrow arched. "The notary's declaration states Mr. Hale walked unaided and ordered his own drink. Where precisely were the limitations?" Silence tapped the room like a metronome. Blake's pen slipped and clicked against the table. Grace returned to the lectern. "We can meet the fraud standard, Your Honor. The evidence shows misrepresentation of the document's nature and concealment after signature. Arthur was told he was updating medical directives. He never received a signed copy. Ryan controlled presentation, pace, and access. Blake called Ryan to the stand, an aggressive move, but perhaps his only one. Ryan avoided my eyes as he took the oath. His jaw worked, his hands clenched the rail. Grace cross-examined with a surgeon's rhythm. "Mr. Hale, did you tell the notary your father had difficulty traveling?" "I said he didn't want to go out that day." "Did you say he was too ill to go to an office?" "A beat too long." I might have said something like that. "You paid $300 in cash?" "I wanted quality service." "Did you tell your father the document was a healthcare directive?" His fingers touched the bridge of his nose. His eyes flicked to Blake. "I may have mentioned health planning in a broader conversation." "Answer the question." Judge Morrison's voice cut clean air. Ryan swallowed. "Yes, maybe. It was part of a bigger discussion." The oxygen thinned. Lies, once elegant in shadows, looked clumsy under lights. "Recess," the judge announced. In the corridor, Grace's phone rang. She stepped aside, listened, then walked straight to the bailiff and murmured. When she returned, there was Flint behind her calm. "Search warrant executed," she whispered. "A rental storage unit under Ryan's name. They found the Omega watch, the Leica, your late wife's silver, all of it. The floor seemed to tilt and then right itself. Not triumph, just relief with edges. When court reconvened, Judge Morrison addressed both tables. The court has been informed that items reported stolen from the plaintiff's home have been recovered from a storage unit rented by the defendant. This adds a criminal dimension to a civil dispute. The record will be transmitted to the King County Prosecutor's Office for review. Color drained from Ryan's face. Chloe gripped his arm, whispering hard, eyes darting. Blake requested a sidebar. The judge shook her head. Return to counsel table. Blake returned, changed smaller, as if the room had grown. The judge delivered her ruling without hesitation. On the evidence presented, this court finds by a preponderance that the gift deed was procured through fraudulent misrepresentation. The notarization violated standard protocols. The notary's sworn statement corroborates irregularities. The defendant's testimony contained material inconsistencies. Premeditation, demonstrated by pre-signature market solicitations, combined with subsequent abandonment of the plaintiff in Mexico and theft of personal property, establishes a deliberate scheme rather than a lawful gift. The deed is void. Title remains with the plaintiff, Arthur Hale. All stolen property shall be returned within 48 hours. Criminal matters are referred to the prosecutor for potential charges. So ordered. Her gavel fell. Wood met wood. The choreography ended. Ryan collapsed into his chair, hands to his temples. Chloe's whisper turned frantic. Blake closed his folio with the quiet of surrender. Grace exhaled and turned to me. We won. I did not speak. In the hushed room, victory sounded like the tick of the courtroom clock and the soft shuffle of people leaving. No one truly wins a case carved from betrayal. But for the first time in months, the law had called what happened by its right name. I drove home in the raked light of late afternoon, the kind of sun that blesses more than it shines. The gate clicked, the tires eased up the familiar slope, and I sat in the still car for a long breath with both hands on the wheel. Same house I'd returned to weeks ago from Mexico, not the same feeling. This time it was cleared, protected, rightfully mine. I stepped out. The key, my new key, the one Ryan could never use, turned with a sure metallic talk. The door swung open and the house exhaled a faint mix of wood, polish, and old coffee, the domestic scent of a life that had survived cross-examination. Not a victory, just home. Across the street, David Coleman's porch light blinked on like a wink. I crossed over and knocked. He opened the door, studied my face, and didn't need words. "You won," he said. I shook my head. "I still have a home." We sat on his steps, poured the good whiskey he saves for rare evenings, and let the neighborhood drift by talking baseball rotations, his fall planting list, the stubborn maple at the corner that never turns when the others do. Ordinary talk, wholly for being ordinary at last. After months of the unnatural, the natural had become extraordinary. I walked back under the sleepy hum of street lamps, locked the door with the new key, and stood in the quiet living room, listening to the house settle. Tomorrow would be consequences. Tonight was peace. 2 days after the ruling, I drove to the Seattle Police Evidence Facility. Fluorescent light, linoleum, the antiseptic hush of bureaucracy. A clerk rolled out a clear bin labeled with my case number. Inside, my grandfather's Omega, crystal scuffed but heartbeat steady. The Leica, its leather case tired at the edges but intact. The family silver wrapped in evidence sleeves, tarnished to a sullen gray. I signed for what had been mine, then carried the bin to the car like it held a sleeping child. Back home, I took the pieces one at a time. The watch first wound, listened, set, returned to its box on the closet shelf where it has always lived. The Leica next tested the shutter. It answered with a crisp, familiar blink. I set it on the office shelf in its old footprint, as if the grain of the wood remembered. The silver came last. I spread a soft cloth, opened the bottle of polish, and worked methodically, elbow, wrist, breath, watching the black lift to reveal a slow, patient shine. A meditation more than a chore. Every rescued spoon, Every brightened knife felt like another small square of my life being restored to color. That evening Grace Lynn called. From the bench, she said, Judge Morrison entered a civil judgment. Ryan and Chloe are jointly liable for $15,000 court costs, emotional distress, and property loss. Can they pay? I asked. Grace's laugh carried no joy. They can't cover their current debts, but the judgment is recorded. It follows them. A permanent mark. I don't need the money, I said. I need accountability. That, she said, is exactly what this is. 2 weeks later, the prosecutor's office called. Jason Carter, an assistant who sounded young and overworked, introduced himself and cleared his throat. Mr. Hale, we're offering your son a plea. He pleads to theft and intentional fraud, 2 years probation, restitution to you, and community service. No jail, he has no prior record, but there will be a permanent conviction. I'm not interested in revenge, I said, only responsibility. If probation delivers accountability, accept the plea. He exhaled, relief audible. Thank you. Some victims demand maximum time. This is about proportion, I said. The word fit weight on one side, weight on the other, the beam finding level. After we hung up, I sat with the house. Afternoon sun slipped across the floor and climbed the wall until it struck the omega on the shelf. I listened to its steady tick, not time exactly, but truth, repeating. Maybe no one really wins after a betrayal like this. But at last, the law had come home with me. Robert Langford's office in Bellevue was all warm oak and soft lamplight, the air faint with the twin scents of paper and ink. I sat across from him while his fingers moved in a calm rhythm across the keyboard. Each keystroke sounded like a latch clicking shut. We'll be explicit, he said, reading aloud from the draft on his screen. I expressly and irrevocably disinherit my son, Ryan Hale, from any share of my estate, now or at any time in the future. Upon my death, my home shall pass to the Seattle Housing Fund for use as senior housing for low-income residents. I watched the evening sun slide down the glass towers outside. Not if I die tomorrow, I said. Not if I die 30 years from now. He nodded, printed, and laid the new will on a leather blotter. My signature moved across the page without tremor. It wasn't triumph. It felt like closing a door that should never have been opened, a lock sliding home for good. Not punishment, protection. Grace Lynn came by the next afternoon with a final packet, polite, professional, the last bookend on a brutal shelf. Total fees, she said, tapping the invoice. $19,500. I wrote off part of the research time last month. I wrote the check without a hitch. You saved my house, I told her, and if I'm honest, probably my sanity. A small smile thinned her lips. Most clients complain about legal fees. Most clients don't have a son who tried to steal their life. When she left, I folded the receipt and slipped it into a file. A chapter closed with a click. Early August fell warm and honey-colored. I was on the porch with iced tea wetting the glass, a newspaper open to a page I wasn't reading, when a rental moving truck coughed its way to the end of the block and backed into the apartment lot. Curiosity tugged. I stood. The cargo bay yawned as a few cheap pieces scraped forward, lamps with dented shades, a wobbling bookcase, a desk I recognized from Ryan's teenage room. Then I saw them. Ryan, thinner, smaller, older than his years, carried boxes like a tired machine. Chloe stood off to the side, cutting the air into orders with sharp, impatient gestures. Evicted, past due, no more rent to bridge the gap. They loaded in near silence. The only sounds the thud of cardboard and the closing clack of drawers surrendered. No swagger, no gloating. Just the breath of two people who had spent themselves on the wrong bargain. When the truck rolled away, it took their noise with it and left the street bare. Behind the rose hedge, I sat again. The breeze lifted a hint of petals. It stung my eyes more than the scene. I did not feel joy. I did not feel grief. I felt a clean, echoing emptiness. David Coleman appeared a few minutes later with a beer in hand, following the fading truck with his eyes. That was them, wasn't it? Yeah, I said. Put out for non-payment. How do you feel about that? I watched the sky iron itself into a long strip of orange over the roofs. Empty. Not happy, not sad. Just empty. He lowered himself onto the step beside me. You won. I shook my head. Winning would mean my son didn't lose everything. This wasn't a victory. It was survival. Sometimes survival is the only kind of win you get to keep. September cooled the edges of the day. The house held fast on its Capitol Hill foundation mined by law and by heart. The garden needed hands. I spent a Saturday pulling weeds, cutting back the roses, pressing iris bulbs into damp soil. Earth under the nails, the sweet mulch smell of ordinary work. David helped, no speeches, just passing tools, the friendship of useful silence. When we were done, we sat on my porch with 2 beers and watched the street go soft. Ever think of selling? He asked. Moving somewhere easier? I looked at the fresh beds, dark and ready. This house was almost taken from me. I won't leave it now. He smiled. Then here's to your next spring. Night came down. My phone buzzed with an unfamiliar number. I let it ring through to nothing. Telemarketer, wrong number, or Ryan. Either way, the porch light hummed, the roses shifted in the breeze, and the house breathed with me. My life had returned to its small, prize scale, groceries and lawn care, a dentist appointment on Tuesday, no lawyers, no affidavits, no betrayals, only living. The call ended. The street stayed quiet. The house stayed standing. I stayed where I was, wrapped in the simplest victory, having outlasted someone else's hunger. Justice is not always satisfying, I've learned, but it is always necessary. The bill is heavy money, sleep, the shape of what you thought family was, and I paid it in full. Was it worth it? I looked at the pale blue paint, the white trim I had redone with my own hands, the porch I rebuilt, the garden I had just set for another season. My house, my life, my terms. Yes, every dollar, every headache, every moment of pain, because some things cannot have a price. Some things must be defended. And some victories, especially the ones that hurt, are exactly the victories worth having. Justice isn't always satisfying, but it's always necessary. If you like this story, please like this video, subscribe to the channel, and tell us in the comments what you think about Alton's decision. Would you have done the same?